Every year, I do this episode to celebrate unique companies. They've endured the test of time, they've withstood the gale winds of the economy, and the brands we've talked about today bloomed out of the permafrost of our great country. I admire Aldo because it is that rare flower, a stunning international success in the fickle business of fashion. I raise my fork to Catelli. I applaud Lee Valley Tools, which has survived and thrived even though it is surrounded on all sides by deep-pocketed box stores. I tip my toque to Sabian Cymbals, a world-class player creating a world-class product, and they do it from the smallest village in New Brunswick. Then there's the Friendly Giant, a television pioneer worshipped and revered by generations of Canadians, a true giant who refused to commercialize his trust with children. It takes pluck and luck to build a good brand. It takes fortitude and vision to build a great one. We certainly have our fair share of them, but what else do you expect from the Great White North when you're under the influence? I'm Terry O'Reilly. Under the Influence was recorded at Pirate Toronto. Series producer Debbie O'Reilly. Sound engineers Keith Ullman and Jeff Devine. Theme by Casey Pick, Jeremiah Pick, and James Ayton. Research Abby Forsyth. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Terry O Influence. See you next week.
This episode brought to you by
Space, a final frontier.
My name is William Shatner, and I am Canadian!
You're listening to CBC Radio 1. CBC, always here for Canada.
1942, Europe. Soldiers find a boy surviving alone in the woods. They make him a member of Hitler's army. But what no one would know for decades, he was Jewish. Could a story so unbelievable be true? I'm Dan Goldberg. I'm from CBC's Personally, Toy Soldier.
Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at +1 with mainly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. A 28-year-old Mexican citizen has died by homicide in Winnipeg. Police responded to a suspicious call in the 300 block of Pritchard. On Monday morning, they found the victim already dead outside. He's been identified as Diego Moscoza. He had been living in Manitoba for the past 2 years. Police say his family has been notified about what happened. CBC News has confirmed Prime Minister Mark Carney will call a federal election on Sunday. No specific date has been mentioned, but it can come as early as April 28th. Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he was asked about the timing of an election.
This is a decision of the Liberals. I've said very clearly that we are up against one of the most serious threats that we've seen in a generation when it comes to the economy. And I propose that we should put in place protections for workers first. But it's clear that Mark Carney wants to go first in an election, and so that's what's going to happen. But we're ready for an election.
The CBC poll tracker suggests the Liberals and the Conservatives are running neck and neck at 37%, with NDP support falling to 11%.
The Conservative government will bring forward Canada First shovel-ready zones.
That's Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre promising to speed up approvals for projects like mines and LNG plants. He says the government would identify locations, do all environmental assessments, and negotiate with any First Nations in the area as required by law, and then issue the approvals.
We will offer pre-permitting before we even get applications, so that permits can be published online with a required checklist of actions that businesses must take to comply in protecting people and the environment.
Poilievre did not say how the timeline would be shorter than normal if all the same checks and negotiations are carried out. A Brandon police officer is being charged with assault in connection with an arrest almost 2 years ago. The police watchdog investigated injuries of a woman who had been arrested in Brandon in August of 2023. At the time, police were called to the 1st Street and Cornwallis Crescent area about a woman causing a disturbance. She was arrested and returned to her home. The woman then filed a complaint with the Independent Investigation Unit after she suffered a broken collarbone. Yesterday, a summons was issued for Constable Brett Long. He's being charged with assault causing bodily harm. The ribbon is being cut on a newly expanded perimeter aviation terminal in Winnipeg. The airline provides vital transportation to northern communities, many of which are fly-in only. The new terminal has 21,000 square feet of additional space, a new restaurant, and custom artwork by Indigenous artists. The number of gates has been increased from 1 to 3, meaning more flights can depart at the same time. Assembly of Manitoba Chief's Grand Chief, Kyra Wilson, says it's a welcome change.
It is a necessity for northern remote First Nations. You know, it is essential for healthcare, food security, and as well as economic opportunities. And so this is why this work is important.
The expansion also means an upgraded baggage security screening system to prevent the transportation of illicit substances. Winnipeg's new police chief wants his officers to connect with Winnipeggers. Chief Gene Bowers was sworn in earlier this week. He says right now officers are run off their feet, going from call to call to call. Bowers says when he was a beat officer, he had time after clearing his queue to make real connections with people.
I would stop in at schools and play floor hockey with the kids and stuff, and those are some of the most rewarding parts of police work. But unfortunately, our members are so busy chasing, going call to call. They can't do that work, and that's why most of us become police officers.
Bowers says one of the ways to do that is to create partnerships with clinicians who work with people in a mental health crisis. And finally, just about all news outlets are facing economic difficulties in recent years, but none more so than local news. And a new study warns that has grave implications for democracy. Jamie Strachan explains.
For many Canadians, accessing local coverage of their communities is becoming increasingly difficult.
We are on a fairly steep downward spiral, particularly on the print front, but also on private broadcasting.
According to a new study from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, Canada's local news landscape is continuing to shrink. One of the report's authors, David McDonald, says communities are losing about 20 local print or online outlets every year. On the broadcast side, 2024 saw more private broadcasters abandon local news than ever before.
This isn't only a small town, rural issue. This is a big city issue where we just don't have the level of scrutiny of public affairs in order to make good democratic decisions.
McDonald says without local news outlets, many are relying on social media, often, he says, a source of misinformation. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Taking a look at your weather forecast for the province this afternoon. In Winnipeg, mainly sunny today. We are seeing a few clouds, especially in the afternoon. A high of +4 today in the big city. In Brandon, a high of +2 with mainly cloudy skies in the Wheat City. Dauphin, a mix of sun and cloud, a high of +3. Flin Flon, clearing skies, a high of -6. Thompson, a high around -14 and mainly sunny. And on the Bay in Churchill, a high of -17 with a chance of flurries. You're listening to CBC.
Good afternoon, Manitoba, and welcome to Radio Noon on this International Day of Happiness. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Here's what we have coming up on the show. Now, speaking of International Day of Happiness, yes, that is actually a thing. We're going to be joined by a Winnipeg psychologist who studies the science behind being happy. We want to hear your comments and your questions about finding happiness coming up after 12:30. Also, getting to know the people, places, and things from Manitoba through a word search. We're going to meet the author of a new book coming up at around 12:15. But first up here, it is Budget Day in Manitoba. We talked to the president of the association that represents Manitoba's municipalities about their expectations coming right up. Well, today is budget day here in Manitoba, and coming up, we're going to find out how the province plans to spend its money in the coming year. Premier Wab Kinew says Manitoba will address the impact of the tariff war with the U.S., while Finance Minister Adrian Salas says the province remains committed to balancing the budget before the next election, expected in 2027. But what would Manitoba's municipalities like to see? Kathy Valentino is the president of the Association of Manitoba Municipalities. She is also a city councillor from Thompson and joins me now on the line. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show, Kathy.
Thank you very much for having me. And I'm already at the legislature building, so I apologize if it gets a little bit loud in the background here, but everybody's happy so far.
Good. And we're actually hearing that the finance minister is speaking right now to members of the media about the budget. So details will be coming out shortly. But before the details come out, just want to hear from you. What does AMM expect to see in this budget for Manitoba municipalities?
Sure. So recently, the premier at our fall convention, there was a commitment to a minimum 2% annual increase in municipal operating funding, and we appreciate that. What we're looking for is in any new funding or funding models that they aren't based on a per capita basis, because that just doesn't work for municipalities, in particular municipalities who have a small tax base or a small number of people living there, but are responsible for a large parcel of land and roads. Per capita funding just doesn't work, and it's not an even playing field. So we're hoping to maybe see some kind of a change in what that calculation is. We all know that in Manitoba, the water and wastewater infrastructure, there's over 300 shovel-ready projects. We need funding to fund these $1.6 billion projects. If we want to grow the economy, there has to be funding in a funding model provincially and federally for water and wastewater infrastructure. So those are two key things we need, is a dedicated water and wastewater funding and looking at the commitment and the funding for municipalities in general.
What else are you finding, having a chance to talk to members of the AMM, besides funding for what you had just mentioned? What else is it that municipalities are looking for or are struggling with right now?
Public safety is key. We hear loud and clear that public safety in all municipalities across the province and bail reform is one of the top priorities. So we will be reviewing Budget 2025 closely, and we're hoping there'll be some concrete actions and some investments to, advance the bail reform measures within provincial jurisdiction, because that's a key component for our members, is the safety in their municipalities. And the catch and release system, it just doesn't work.
I want to talk now about tariffs, because that's obviously big on a lot of people's minds, given what's happening with China, of course, the continuing trade war with the United States. What is it that you're hearing from your members about how municipalities are being affected by this?
There's a lot of uncertainty in municipalities across Manitoba in regards to tariffs, and we clearly support the Premier, who has signaled a strong focus on supporting Manitobans and a Team Manitoba approach about supporting each other. I did have the opportunity to go to Washington as my role with FCM, one of their conferences, to discuss tariffs and how it's going to impact both sides of the border. Through AMM, I had the opportunity to speak last week to Minnesota and North Dakota, because we have border towns, and it's affecting both sides of the border, our own towns and municipalities. So we need to ensure that we still have relationships and that we're still willing to be able to help where we can help. But obviously, we are following the lead of our Premier, as it's the province that has those trade agreements with the United States. So we are trying to be there to help and to pass messages and to support and to get the message on what municipalities in Manitoba, which ones are being affected and how can we support them. And really, what does Manitoba export and what do we import? So those are some of the things that we're working on also, to provide information and context to Manitobans and to municipalities that are clearly affected, but affecting everybody.
Kathy, were you able to speak with the finance minister or the premier before the budget was created to share what AMM was looking for? Were you guys involved in those discussions?
We're involved in discussions kind of throughout the year that we hear. We did have opportunity to meet with Minister Sala and his department. We've had discussions and meetings with the Minister of Municipal Relations and their department. That's where we raise a lot of our municipalities' issues that we hear. We just spent 2 months on the road touring and visiting with municipalities. So we bring that back because we want to be at the table with the province to try and work towards some solutions or creative ideas on how we can help and give to municipalities what they need.
Finally, Kathy, I want to ask you, you were elected the president of AMM in November of last year. These are really interesting times for you in your role. How's it going so far?
Well, I can tell you, interesting is a great word, but I love it. Don't get me wrong. And being able to tour municipalities and hearing what's actually going on in these small municipalities and big ones, it's absolutely great. And to be able to really bring forward ideas, and I really always want to try and have a creative solution or an idea that we can work with the province with and just work together. I think it's important that we collaborate with what we're hearing from municipalities so that we can bring that forward to try to provide some solutions. And it's been super interesting, especially now with the tariff situation and the federal election on the horizon. I think that Manitoba is unique, and we have some good opportunities on where we are situated in Canada. That they say I'm always a positive one, but I am optimistic that we'll keep fighting for municipalities in Manitoba, and it'll be okay.
Kathy, I really do appreciate you joining us today. I know today is a very busy day today, and we're probably one of many interviews that you're going to be doing today, but really enjoyed having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. Kathy Valentino is the president of the Association of Manitoba Municipalities and a city councillor from Thompson. Stay tuned here to CBC Radio 1, or you can also visit us at cbc.ca/Manitoba for more details on the provincial budget.
Manitoba is the kind of place that draws you in. Every day it's growing, it's changing. Just when you think you've got it figured out, though, there's something new to understand. I'm Marcy Marcusa, host of the CBC Daily Podcast. This is Manitoba. I've covered the news from the rail line in Churchill to the border in Emerson, and it's talking about the local stories that help us understand this place. That's what This is Manitoba is all about. Find it on CBC Listen or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
It is 12:14 and you're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app and streaming on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Still ahead here, there's a new book on the market right now titled Word Search of Manitoba. It is a word search focused on all things Manitoba. Stay tuned for that. Well, let's take a look at your forecast right now. Today here in Winnipeg, high of 4 degrees, and enjoy it while you can because temperatures are going to start to fall. Today, mainly sunny, increasing cloud this afternoon, southwest wind at 30. Tomorrow, mainly cloudy with a slight chance of flurries, -7, but will drop to -12 by the morning. Tomorrow, high of -7, under a mix of sun and cloud, north wind at 40. Saturday, -3, increasing cloud with periods of light snow. Right now in the province, Brandon, -3 and mostly cloudy for you. Light snow and blowing snow in Churchill at -20. We have a northwest wind gusting to 50 right now. Sunshine and 1 degree in Dauphin. At this hour in Flin Flon, -10 and partly cloudy for you in the Paw, -8 under a cloudy sky. Drifting snow being reported in Thompson at -13 with a northwest wind gusting to 40. And in Winnipeg right now, 3 degrees at the Forks, 2 degrees at the airport, and mostly cloudy. Looking for a new way to learn about Manitoba? Well, yesterday on the show, we talked to Travel Manitoba about places to check out in our province. But if you don't plan to travel, how about discovering our province through a word search? Nick Cranford has created Word Search of Manitoba. It is a book filled with word searches, all focused on all things Manitoba. Nick joins me now via Zoom from Newfoundland and Labrador. Well, hi, Nick.
Good afternoon, Marjorie.
Thank you for joining me. So what encouraged you to make Word Search of Manitoba?
Well, I got the idea from my great nan, Rita Cranford of New Harbor. I'm actually from Newfoundland. Yeah, that was like her big passion. No matter what was going on in her life, she always had the word search going with her, morning, noon, and night. It was her breakfast, lunch, and dinner essentially. And so I kind of got the idea, why don't I do one for Newfoundland Labrador? So I came up with it, and it really took off here in Newfoundland. I mean, it sold thousands upon thousands of copies. So I decided, you know what, why not expand to Nova Scotia? That's done very well there. And I've also done three more provinces since then: Alberta, word search of Alberta, word search of Saskatchewan, and now you guys, word search of Manitoba.
So you've touched on all the prairie provinces now.
Yes, yeah, yeah, I'm kind of working backwards now a little bit. So yeah, I'm halfway. I'm actually taking this across the country. I'm doing one for all 10 provinces. You guys are at the fifth, so you guys are at the halfway point.
Well, we're glad because we are actually known as the middle province. So that makes a lot of sense. So
Well, there you go. I mean, that's something.
So Nick, tell us, what will people discover through doing the word search?
Oh, it's everything you can think of that Manitoba has to offer. So it's communities, people you may know, famous Manitobans, the sports teams, the Jets, the Blue Bombers, famous spots like the Forks, Churchill with all the polar bears, even the stuff from the Mennonite heritage, businesses, plants, animals, parks. It's like everything under the sun.
Yeah. So you've touched on everything. How much research did you have to do in order to create this word search on Manitoba?
Oh well, I really immersed myself in the province. Like each word search revolves around a theme. Like for example, restaurants, hotels, parks. So like I would do the research. So like everything relating to restaurants, destinations. It was a lot of hours were put into it.
And have you been to Manitoba yourself?
Yes, I have. I was there the year before last. I actually went out to visit Altona, the Frieson's printing plant. So I really got to get the feel of the town. Got to see the prairies and how cold it was. I got to see the forks. I mean, it was pretty interesting spots.
Yeah, because you are in publishing yourself. That's right. That's why you went out to Altona.
Yes, that's right. Me and my family here in Newfoundland, we have a company called Flanker Press. So like we're like the biggest publisher in Newfoundland. We're really starting to spread our wings now across the country, and yeah, here we go.
So now, which province are you going to do next? Because you said the hope is to touch on every province in Canada, right?
Yes, yeah, I plan to get all 10 provinces done this year. They're pretty much ready to go, just doing the finishing touches. Probably doing Ontario next. I've got one there for Ontario and also a city one for Toronto. Gonna see where that goes, honestly.
It seems the timing of this is so perfect, given that there's this new sense of patriotism here in Canada. I mean, how does it make you feel to know that you're doing something and you're drawing attention to every province in this country?
Well, there's no better time. I mean, we're all Canadians. This is our home. This is where we live. We're all friends and neighbors. I mean, I didn't think it would have a much deeper purpose now, but it does. And I'm very happy to play a small part in this great country of ours, Yeah, like I really hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah. And so where can people find the word search of Manitoba, Nick?
Right now it's on Amazon. I self-published it there. A lot of great Canadian people. It's printed here in Canada, print on demand there. Lots of, I mean, even though they're an American company, they are very accessible. I also got my own little online bookstore set up through my Facebook page, Nick's Word Searches. So give that a follow if you want to keep up to date on my journey and everything. I do plan on getting in the stores in the near future. So stay tuned.
Nick, I really do appreciate you joining us today here on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you, Marjorie, and I hope I make you proud, Manitoba.
Absolutely. Thank you. That is Nick Cranford, the creator of Word Search of Manitoba.
Rubik's, Jigsaw, Wordle? Pfft, hardly. Get ready, Canada. It's time for another edition of That's Puzzling. Host Pia Chattopadhyay competes against one familiar voice and one clever listener in a battle of brain games devised by puzzle master Peter Brown. That's Puzzling on the Sunday Magazine. Sunday morning at 9:30 in Newfoundland, and on demand on CBC Listen. Listen up to groundbreaking sounds. Listen up to new and emerging artists. Listen up to what's happening with your favorite musicians. Subscribe now to CBC Music's newsletter, Listen Up. Keep tabs on everything happening in music. News, exclusive live performances, the best new songs, and so much more. Subscribe now at cbc.ca/listen up.
12:23 now. Right now in Portage, mostly cloudy and 3 degrees, and in Swan River, -3. And now, the latest in our special series of stories produced by filmmaking students in the CREATE program at Sisler High School in collaboration with CBC Manitoba. This week, they're paying homage to the International Day of Happiness, which is today, by the way. Armed with their cameras, a microphone, a sign that asks the question, "What makes you happy?" the team hit the downtown campus of Red River College. They recruited RRC student Sean Monfero to ask that question, and psychologist Douglas Tatarn to explain the answers. Joseph Huntington, Raiden Dumoran, and Ewan Webster produced the short video. Here now is their story.
Hello, my name is Sean Monfero, and today at RRC, we are going to be figuring out the answer to the day-old question, what makes you happy?
Well, writing makes me happy. I love to write poetry.
Seeing my improvement and my friends' improvements made me pretty happy.
Mandala art. I made a broken clock, a skeleton.
Hello, we are in the library, so I'll try to be as quiet as possible. But today, we are going to be answering the day-old question, what makes you happy? And I gotta ask you.
Recently, I went to a restaurant with friends, and I had an amazing experience. The food was wonderful.
Going to Toronto with my classmates back in June was pretty fun.
Happiness, it's an interesting notion we take for granted, but happiness is one of the 4 emotions that are part of being a human being.
My last memory of something that made me happy was getting an A on my math test that I was expecting to fail, so that definitely stuck with me.
I'm Joseph Huntington. I'm here with Sean Monfero. And Sean, what makes you happy? First thing that comes to mind is probably just my friends for sure, and definitely my girlfriend. Yeah, she's gonna love this, but this is her sleeping. All right, perfect. Here you go. Yeah, I hope when she sees this, she's not gonna get mad at me. So, yeah, I won't be happy after that.
Would you be able to answer one question about happiness?
Is it that question?
Yes, it is.
I guess I could.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, what makes you happy?
Gingerbread molasses cookies.
Incredible. What about them makes you so happy?
Well, the taste, obviously.
Love that. Do you make them yourself?
No, I wish I could make them myself. That would be a lifelong dream.
Maybe the gingerbread cookie has meaning to him. Maybe it brings memories of when he used to eat gingerbread cookies with his grandma, and he felt really connected and cared for and valued.
Excuse me. Hi. For a small little question, this is for a CBC documentary. Would you like to answer just one small question?
My graduation trip last July. Went to Vancouver. Had a good time. It felt really amazing, to be honest, because I didn't think I would do it.
Well, I worked really hard, and I felt like this was me doing my best, and I pushed through all these barriers, and I felt, and I say potent and powerful, they go, yeah, I felt really potent and powerful. And as soon as I said the words, you could see that their happiness got bigger. And it was sort of proving the fact that as you express your feelings, the emotions get bigger.
Hi, one question. What makes you happy?
Anything that come to mind? Not participating in conversations like this.
Oh, perfect.
Love that. Protecting nature.
There you go. All right, I'd be happy too.
when I come here and I see plants growing, it's like this is the kind of world I want to live in, where things are thriving and, they're happy.
Here we are at the friendship bench, and just like friendships, happiness is what makes us human and connects us. Yet it's unique to each person. So I have to ask, what makes you happy?
So much fun.
That is Sean Monferro. Create students Joseph Huntington, Raiden Dumoran, and Ewan Webster produced the short video. You can actually watch this on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. And speaking of happiness, we want to hear from you in our call-in conversation here after 12:30. What makes you happy? Maybe you're just also trying to find some inspiration yourself. Give us a call coming up here after 12:30. Give you the number now, 204-780-0893. And stay tuned for that coming up.
You say that you're doing okay and just fine. But sitting in the chair across me, you tell me something's missing in your life. You can't pinpoint it, it's a subtle undertone, and you say, my life is abundant. I got everything beyond it, exceeded every dream, but I can't shake this feeling. My life is full of color, surrounded by gifts, overflowing. I'm rich in everything, but I can't shake this feeling. It's been hard to get up in the morning. I got more than I could ask for. I look in the mirror and I'm wondering, what do I want? What do I need? I got the right picket fence, perfect picture. Oh, from the outside looking in, my life is abundant. I got everything beyond it, exceeded every dream, but I can't shake this feeling. My life is full of color, surrounded by gifts, overflowing. I'm rich in all the things, but I can't shake this feeling. Too much of anything's so good, too much of anything's no good. This ain't good for me, I can't stop it. How do I get there from here? How do I know what's real? How do I stop the beat? I can't stop this.
That is a new tune from Manitoba's own Renee Lamoureux. That is Abundant. Stay with us. Your CBC Local News is next.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at +2 with mainly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. CBC News has learned a 28-year-old Mexican citizen has died by homicide in Winnipeg. Police responded to a suspicious call along Pritchard on Monday morning. They found the victim already dead outside a residence. He had been identified as Diego Moscoza, and he had been living in Manitoba for the past 2 years. Police say his family has been notified. China is hitting Canada with a new round of tariffs, 25% on pork and seafood, along with 100% on canola, a key export for farmers in Western Canada, and it's happening at a crucial time of the year for farmers. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh explains.
We average about 1,000 acres of canola.
Jason Johnson farms less than 2 kilometers from the U.S. border near Darlingford, Manitoba. Preparing to seed, he's watching as prices drop, about $2 a bushel.
So on my farm, that would mean about an $80,000 loss.
The drop comes as China imposes 100% tariffs on Canadian canola. Retaliation after Canada put tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. A move made in lockstep with the U.S. to prevent China from taking over the North American EV market.
No one wants the Chinese electric vehicles anyway.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith accuses China of unfairly targeting Canadian farmers.
I think it is a divide and conquer strategy.
The federal government calls China's tariffs unjustified, but has not announced any plans to help canola farmers. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And for the first time in its history, the International Olympic Committee has elected a woman as its president.
This is an extraordinary moment. As a 9-year-old girl, I never thought that I would be standing up here one day, getting to give back to this incredible movement of ours.
That's Kirsty Coventry, accepting the IOC presidency today in Greece. She takes over from Thomas Bach, who leaves office after the maximum 12-year term. Coventry, who is from Zimbabwe, is not only the first woman to lead the IOC, she's also the first African to lead the IOC. The 41-year-old former swimmer is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist and is currently Zimbabwe's Minister of Youth and Sport. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
That is Matt Humphrey with your CBC Local News. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 189.3 FM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app, and streaming on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. It is 12:33 now, and coming up during our call-in conversation, yes, today is the International Day of Happiness. So if you're happy and you know it, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments about what makes you happy. Maybe you have a question. Maybe there's something that you're trying to find that makes you happy. Give us a call. Here are the numbers to call: 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can also text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. We're going to get to that question in just a moment. But first, let's turn our attention to someone who's pretty much happy on most days, except for when he has to deliver some bad news weather-wise.
Okay.
That is CBC weather specialist Riley Lachuk. And I'm going to say today you have a happy forecast.
Yes.
Maybe in a couple days you don't have a happy forecast.
Yeah.
So, if you like cold and you like ice, maybe you'll be happy.
Yeah.
It's how you see the glass, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are going through that freeze-thaw cycle,
Mhm.
that spring freeze-thaw. So we are going to, for example, today, looking at temperatures above the freezing mark. Next couple days, we're back below freezing, and then we jump back above again. So, yes, I don't know. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Absolutely.
+2 in Winnipeg at the moment. +3s through Steinbach and Sprague at the freezing mark into northwestern Ontario. Brandon right now at -3. Mostly sunny skies here in the Red River Valley. There's a few stray flurries south of Brandon right now on radar. Some of this likely not even making it to the ground, but nonetheless a little bit cloudier to the west of us as we get through the day today. I do expect to see some increasing clouds as we get through the afternoon. So I think even by late afternoon we'll see a mostly cloudy sky here in Winnipeg. Certainly a lot cloudier overnight tonight. A little bit windy tonight as well, looking at winds picking up north 30, gusting to 50. This is because of a high pressure ridge that will start to sink slowly south. It will clear our skies, so it'll push that cloud cover out by the time we get to the morning hours tomorrow. But there is the chance that we could see maybe a couple of flurries out of that overnight tonight. Clear and cold for tomorrow. Bit of high-level thin cloud hanging around, but other than that, not a lot to speak of for your Friday. Into Saturday, we start sunny, and then we start to see our next system, a low-pressure system moving in from Montana. This spreads a little bit of snow on the leading edge of this early in the morning on Saturday. Then I'm thinking more like periods of snow as we get into the afternoon hours, really across southern Manitoba. Not much in the way of accumulation, but certainly maybe a dusting as we get through Saturday into Sunday. I've got Winnipeg at a high of 4 degrees today. Maybe we get to 5 or 6, but we'll keep it at 4 for now and see how we do. Morden, Emerson, 6s and 7s this afternoon. Thompson, -12 under a partly cloudy sky. Compare that to tomorrow, looking at a temperature dropping to -8 by the afternoon, -3 for Saturday with periods of light snow. And then by the time we get into early next week, we're back up to 4s and 5s.
Sunshine makes me happy.
It does.
I'm glad there's a
Me
little
too.
bit in your forecast.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll take it.
Yeah, so will I.
Thanks a lot, Riley.
You're welcome.
That's CBC weather specialist Riley Lachuk. And Riley, we'll have more on your forecast coming up tonight on CBC Winnipeg News at 6, on CBC Television, also streaming on CBC Gem. Well, It is International Day of Happiness. It was established back in 2012 by the United Nations, and it's celebrated around the world. As we heard, the filmmakers from the CREATE program at Sisler High School also decided to celebrate the emotion. They asked folks at Red River College the question, what makes you happy? And they interviewed Douglas Tatarn. He is a Winnipeg psychologist who spent decades researching emotions, what they are, how they're expressed, and how they impact you. And yes, that includes happiness. So we're asking you, what makes you happy? Maybe you're looking for a little bit of inspiration yourself. Give us a call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893, 204-588-7355 is where you can text us, 204-588-7355. And I see we're already starting to get phone calls and messages. I want to start off by saying good afternoon. Welcome to the show, Douglas.
Thank you very much, Marjorie. It's wonderful to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. Okay, let's start off with a very simple question here. We're going to get to our callers and comments right away. What is happiness?
Well, simply put, happiness is one of the 4 basic emotions that we're biologically programmed to experience. It's that straightforward.
It's that simple. Well, we've got already a caller on the line. Robert joins us now. Hi, Robert. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What makes you happy, Robert?
I gave my children land to build a house beside me, and I've been blessed with 5 grandchildren under 5.
We are going to get the audio going here for Douglas. But what Robert is, thank you so much for your call, Robert. But Douglas, what Robert was saying is that what makes him happy is his grandchildren. His grandchildren make him happy. I'm sure you've probably heard that from a lot of people about people that make them happy.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've learned about happiness is that there's kind of 2 different routes to happiness, and they're based on what I call core feelings. So one of the routes that we have is relational, and the other route is through accomplishment. And so what was his name? Robert?
Robert, yes.
Yeah, Robert is connecting into his grandchildren, which is a relational way of being happy. And so if he checks into it, there's going to likely be a core feeling, something like feeling significant or feeling valued or feeling connected and cared for. And so when you have one of those core feelings, it automatically begins eliciting a feeling of or an emotion of happiness.
We are speaking with Douglas Tatarn, a Winnipeg psychologist, and we're asking what makes you happy. Give us a call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can also text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. Douglas, as we heard earlier in that CREATE clip that we were playing from the students at Sisler, you suggested that the ginger molasses cookies make this one gentleman happy because it may have been a memory that he's connected to, like maybe his grandmother's love for him. Tell us about the power of these kinds of emotional connections.
You know, that's a good example of how the emotional system works. One of the things that I say is the emotional system is not rational, but it's lawful. And it works through impressions and associations. So the cookie by itself is just a cookie, but the association to the cookie may be that it connects him to his grandmother or something like that. I know for me, growing up when I was like 6 years old, I would go to our farm out in the country, and my grandmother didn't speak English. So we had no real way of communicating, but she smiled at me and she gave me cookies and milk. So now when I go to the farm and I sit down at the exact same table and my brother serves me tea, I start getting the same feelings of happiness because it reminds me of those times I felt really loved and connected and cared for by my grandmother.
That's your comment, and then kind of connecting the smell of sweet molasses cookies to a grandmother, and then hearing Robert's first comment about his connection to his grandchildren. There's something about grandchildren. I feel like there's a theme. I mean, what is it about that, about the connection with grandparents and grandchildren that makes us feel so happy or so warm?
Well, you know, it's interesting because often it's said that as grandparents, we do a better job, you know, in our relationship to the grandkids than we did with our own. And often that's because we're free of the burden of the responsibility of making sure they have all of the discipline and other things that we need to look after them. So grandparents and grandchildren tend to be the epitome of wonderful relationships because they're so free of so many responsibilities and they're just there to appreciate the relationship.
So, what makes you happy then, Douglas?
Oh man, I have a lot of things that make me happy. Anything from my own grandchild. I've got one, and I want more. No pressure on my kids, but when I see her smile at me, I just feel so connected and cared for. I mean, there's just such a pure radiance of love coming at me that it's inescapable, right? I also feel happy when I'm in, I think I'd mentioned on the film, when I'm in around plants. I spent a lot of time as a child with plants, and so they're my companions in many ways. And I feel connected and cared for to plants, and I understand them very deeply, much more than most people. So automatically there's that connection of significance and connected and cared for, and it makes me happy.
We are speaking with Douglas Tatarn, a Winnipeg psychologist. We're asking you what makes you happy on this International Day of Happiness. Maybe you'd also like to ask Douglas a question about happiness. Give us a call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can also text us, 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. And we actually got a comment on YouTube, Douglas from Clifford, who texted to say, watching and listening to CBC Manitoba makes him happy. CBC Radio 1 on the Listen app. So he's making a connection between listening to us, thank you so much, Clifford, and happiness. I guess also sounds can make people happy.
It's always about the meaning of things, so the sound of CBC Radio, I would have to ask him, but it was like, well, what does it mean to you to listen? It might feel like he's getting an expansive view of his country, and he's feeling connected to the culture and the people and the celebration of who we are with CBC. And that could make him happy. So there's a sense of being connected and cared for, and maybe even seen and recognized as one of the Canadians that we are.
I want to ask you, what have you learned about the specific emotion of happiness through your research?
Of the four emotions, anger, sadness, and fear, happiness is the one everyone wants. And yet the other ones tend to be so much more salient in our lives. And, if I ask someone to think about a time that they were angry, it's usually pretty easy. Think about a time that you were fearful, it's pretty easy. And often the energy will flare up when they go there. When I ask people to think about happiness, the energy isn't often as big, which is really fascinating to me. Why would that one more positive thing be down? And I think what it is that, if we're going around feeling happy all the time, it takes a lot of energy, right? So I might be feeling connected and cared for, or significant or potent and powerful, that would normally make me happy. But because I'm feeling it all the time, I kind of habituate to it. And it's like I'm saving happiness for special occasions, like for my birthday or times when things are being celebrated. So it was just an interesting insight that happiness seems to be wanting to sit in the background and not necessarily in the foreground, because it would be hard to be happy all the time. When we find people like that, we call them manic, right? There's an uncontrollability to them. So just an interesting insight and reflection that I've had on that.
It's really interesting because, you are right. We can immediately think of all the bad moments, the bad things that have happened to us. They immediately come to the forefront. But trying to think of all those happy times, all those positive times, it takes a little bit more effort to get that to come to the front of your mind.
Yes, and one of the ways that I refer to that is that any emotional cycle that gets stimulated that isn't brought to completion will tend to be unresolved and haunt us. So often when we're happy, we just get to laugh and express it, and it gets resolved, and it sort of leaves a minimal impression on us, and it sort of fades into the background. But if we get really angry and we don't finish this expression cycle and it's unresolved, it tends to haunt us, and it stays with us, and it gets triggered day in and day out sometimes, right? Same thing with fear. So we tend to accumulate negative impressions because we don't finish their expression and complete the cycle, which is probably why the negative emotions tend to sort of hang around longer and tend to be more salient for us.
We're speaking with Douglas Tatarn, Winnipeg psychologist, here on Radio Noon during our call-in conversation. We want to hear from you about happiness. How do you view happiness? What makes you happy? 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can also text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. And we got a text here, Douglas. This person says, I love spending time in nature with family and friends, especially walks and hikes. My favorite is people plus nature plus exercise equals happiness. I feel there's a lot of happiness there. The endorphins from exercise, just being around people, nature, there's a lot of happiness in there.
And this is a complicated subject. And if we're going to actually really go into the nature of happiness, we have to make a distinction between it and pleasure, right?
Okay.
So when I eat a cookie, that's my physical brain going yum, 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 yum. And that's pleasure. I really like that. When someone gives me a massage, there's a pleasureful experience there. That's not the same as happiness. Happiness is like when a core feeling gets stimulated and it brings about the emotion of happiness, which is different than pleasure, right? So for him, again, we'd have to ask, because everything has different meanings. It may be that when he's out walking in the park, he's feeling adequate or potent and powerful, that he's actualizing a vision that he's had for his life. And so there's a happiness there that he's completing and pursuing a goal and a purpose that he's had in life. Maybe the emphasis is on being connected and cared for with friends that share a common vision and appreciation. That makes him happy.
That's interesting. I didn't know that there was a difference between happiness and pleasure, but I'm glad that you explained that to us. We have Becky on the line who joins us now. Hi, Becky.
Hi there, Marjorie. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much. What's your comment or question, Becky?
My comment about happiness is this time of year, back in 2004, I was finishing up at Brandon University and didn't know what happened next. And then I came to Winnipeg in May. I remember it greatly because it was the snowstorm of May, and built a beautiful life here. And I just always think back of all the trials and tribulations that I went through, and realizing that, I did get this back after being separated during COVID. I did get, friends are reconnecting, communities building back, and that's what makes me happy and keeps me going.
Thank you so much, Becky, for calling in and sharing your experience. You heard from Becky there.
Yeah. There's another one where the happiness can be multidimensional. It could be when we're moving from very rough times, the feeling of relief that we get from the burden and the overwhelm of the rough, sad times can lead to us feeling of happiness, just this sense of relief from moving out of a negative state. And the other thing is that she may be feeling a sense of potency and, feeling potent and powerful, that she had a vision and was able to follow through in it and accomplish it, right? So, and that's the core feelings for accomplishment are to feel adequate or to feel potent and powerful in moving towards the vision or the purpose that we have, right? So any situation where we feel adequate or potent and powerful will elicit some sense of happiness.
Does happiness feel more potent and powerful after you've come out with something challenging?
Very much so, because we've tested ourselves, right? And we've sort of dug deep inside and found out what we're made out of, and to have gone through those tribulations and come out a better person on the other side, of course we're going to feel happy. We're going to be like transformed and really embracing our sense of power and ability to fulfill the visions that we have for our lives.
We're speaking with Douglas Tatarn, a Winnipeg psychologist, here on Radio Noon on this International Day of Happiness. I want to hear from you. We've had some wonderful comments coming into the show here about what makes you happy. If you want to give us a call and share your story, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can also text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. And Douglas, we've received a text from Leslie, and Leslie said, what makes me feel happy is going for walks in the park in the summer with my little dog. And I've heard that from a lot of people, is that dogs do make them happy.
Yeah. Well, again, there's a sense of connection potentially with the dog, to feel seen and appreciated. Dogs are just so good at unconditional love. right?
Yeah.
And that we get to feel that sense of connection and being valued by them. And then again, there's a sense of like, I'm living a life where I can actually do this kind of thing, where I have the space to go for a walk in the park and enjoy my life. I mean, what a sense of accomplishment that such a simple thing can actually be invoking in us.
We have Laura on the line. Hi, Laura. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So I was reading my meditation this morning, and it was trying to differentiate between happiness and joy. Explaining that happiness depends on the circumstances, but joy is a joy in the heart that should not be affected by circumstances. What does your psychologist think of that?
Well, your psychologist actually happens to have about 45 years of meditation experience, so I'm very familiar with the distinction between joy and happiness. And so we're getting into some technical details here, but in meditation, there's something called the jhanas. And the jhanas are literally bliss states that we can move into in deep, deep states of meditation. There's 8 of them, but even if you just get to the first one, man, you're riding a canoe of joy and ecstasy. And the difference between them is happiness is an activation of the sympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system, just like anger and fear are. They're a sympathetic component of our autonomic nervous system, whereas the joy that she's talking about is when we get a deep activation of the parasympathetic part of our nervous system. And that usually only comes about through deep meditation or through deep contemplation, or say when you're sitting around a fire and you get to rest, not just to normal, but to way below normal. And then there's literally joy available at our fingertips if we just rest into those spaces.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for your question, Laura. We have Andrea on the line. Hi, Andrea. Oh, we've lost Andrea there. I want to ask you, if someone says to you, Douglas, I can't find my happiness, I don't feel happy, what would you say to them?
Well, again, it'd be a bit of a conversation, but there's a couple different routes that we can get there from. One is that you may be just so habituated to your life that you're not paying attention to the core feelings that are actually there. So one of the things I do recommend for people who want to be more happy is find situations where they feel significant or valued, connected, potent and powerful, anything that's real for them, and then say it out loud. Think of the person, visualize it, and say, I feel connected and cared for. So if I think of my granddaughter and I see her smiling face and her arms outreached to hug me, and I go, I feel significant and I feel connected and cared for. Just imagining that and saying the words makes the feeling bigger. I can feel my heart getting lighter and I can feel the happiness wanting to come through, right? And if she was here, she'd be dancing with me because that's how it manifests in her young body. The other side is that the person may have accumulated so many negative states, whether fear states or sadness states, that it's very hard for their emotional system to actually activate without being overwhelmed by the sort of vortices of energy that want to pull them down into a negative state. So under those conditions, our nervous system, I call it, sort of shuts off and we move into a depressive state. And now no energy is allowed to move in the nervous system, in the emotional system, because if it does, it'll move into the negative states. So
we have a couple more minutes to take your calls here on Radio Noon. We are speaking with Douglas Tatarn, a Winnipeg psychologist, about what makes you happy. Maybe there's a story you'd like to share with us. Maybe you have a question. We got a great question there about meditation, happiness, and joy. Give us a call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can also text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. We've received a text from Shar. Shar says, Douglas, music. Almost all of music, but particularly oldies that bring back my younger years. There's always that tune, that song you listen to that's just like, makes me happy.
Yeah. So again, what's the meaning of the tune, right? I have certain songs that I put on that I start singing to immediately, which when you sing, you open up your heart. It's easy to kind of get a heartful connection when we're singing. But also, they're associated with a certain era in our life. Often when we're younger, more carefree times, more exciting times, more sense of connection to our friends and the expansiveness and potential of our lives. And so songs can bring us back to those spaces and make us happy because we feel all the potential and we can feel the potency of our existence and the joy of the connections that we once had.
It's been so interesting learning about happiness. And thank you so much for joining us today, Douglas, on this International Day of Happiness. Thank you so much again.
I'm very happy to do so.
Douglas Tatarn, he is a Winnipeg psychologist. Thank you to everyone for your calls and comments today here during our call-in conversation.
Imagine me and you, I do. I think about you day and night. It's only right to think about the girl you love and hold her tight. So happy together. If I should call you up, invest a dime, and you say you belong to me, release my mind. Imagine how the world could be so very fine, so happy together. No matter how they toss the dice, it had to be. The only one for me is you, and you for me, so happy together. I can't see me loving nobody but you for all my life.
Oh, yes, there's an oldie. That is the Turtles there with Happy Together. Well, you know who makes us happy here on the radio? Our very own Faith Vandal, who has a big smile on their face. Hi, Faith.
Marjorie, we're going to continue this talk about happiness because we're going to meet a young filmmaker who's known since he was a child that he wanted to tell stories that make people happy. So stay tuned for that conversation. He'll be live in studio at 5:20. And of course, we'll have the very latest on the budget.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, that could get mixed emotions. We'll tell you.
Lots of different kinds.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Faith.
Thank you.
Faith Vandal, host of Up to Speed. Tune into CBC Radio 1 starting here at 3 o'clock. Well, thank you for tuning into Radio Noon today. And I want to thank the incredible crew on the show today, Marshall Hodgins, our directors, Wendy Parker, producer, also Wendy Parker, and in charge of our YouTube live stream, Travis Peterson. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, and stay tuned here to CBC Radio 1 coming up next. Quirks and Quarks. Have a good one.